The wind had long since died, leaving the forest in a breathless silence as the traveler pushed through the undergrowth. His boots crunched against frostbitten leaves, the pale winter sun weakly glimmering through the skeletal trees above. For days he had walked with little company other than the crows that trailed behind him, waiting for him to falter, waiting for him to die by late afternoon. His path carried him up a slope where the trees grew sparse and the air smelled faintly of rot and iron. That was when he saw it, the silhouette of an estate crouching against the horizon, half swallowed by vines and shadow. Once it must have been grand. Tall spires and carved arches still jutted defiantly into the sky, though windows gaped empty and the roof sagged where fire or time had taken its toll. The traveler paused at the iron gate, now rusted and hanging from a single hinge. He had not intended to stop, but his water skin was nearly empty, and his legs ached from days without rest. Shelter, even a ruin, was better than the open road with night fast approaching. With a grunt, he shoved the gate wide, the screech of rusted metal echoing far too loudly in the stillness. Inside, the courtyard was littered with shards of stone and broken statuary. Weeds curled through the cracks in the flagstones like veins. He stepped lightly, instinct telling him the place was not abandoned as thoroughly as it appeared. Abandoned houses often had owners, the kind that lurked in shadows and waited for fools to wander in. The traveler found a side door half hidden by ivy. Its lock had long since been pried open, leaving only splinters of wood clinging to the frame. He ducked inside. Dust motes swam in the shafts of light that bled through cracks in the boarded windows. The air smelled damp, thick with mildew and something faintly coppery, like dried blood. He told himself he would rest a short while, perhaps find a working well, and leave at dawn. Yet, as he moved deeper through the darkened halls, an unease settled over him. He had expected silence, but instead he heard faint sounds, dripping water, shifting wood, and something else. A sound that was not the house. It was faint at first, like a whimper carried on the draft. He froze, tilting his head. It came again, a voice, weak and muffled. Rising up from somewhere below. The traveler's hand went instinctively to the hilt of his knife. He followed the sound through a cracked archway and down a spiraling staircase choked with cobwebs. The air grew colder with each step, dampness seeping through the stone. At the bottom he found a door of heavy oak, its iron handle chilled to the touch. The voice was clearer now, though still faint pleading words that caught in the silence like fish on a hook. With effort, he shoved the door open. The hinges groaned, and the smell hit him first. Damp stone, rust, and the unmistakable stench of old decay. His eyes adjusted slowly to the dark chamber beyond. Chains rattled against the far wall. In the dim glow of light filtering from a barred window, he saw her. A girl, no older than 16, her wrists shackled above her head with iron manacles, bolted into the wall. Her dress, though frayed and dirt-stained, was of fine make, something a merchant's daughter might wear, not a peasant's rags. Her face was pale, hollow-cheeked, and her lips trembled as she lifted her head to him. Her eyes widened with sudden, desperate hope. "Please," she whispered, voice hoarse as if from days of crying. "Please, don't leave me here." The traveler stood frozen in the doorway, grip tightening on his knife. He had stumbled across many strange sights on the road, but this was different. Who had chained her here? Why was she still alive when the house around her had been dead for decades? The girl's chains rattled again as she pulled feebly against them. "Please," she said louder now, urgency cracking her voice. "I'll reward you. I swear it, I'll do whatever you ask. Just don't leave me here." Her words echoed off the stone, trembling in the silence. The traveler's heart beat hard against his ribs. He had the sudden, uncanny feeling of standing on the edge of something vast and dangerous. as though one step forward would carry him into a darkness he could never return from. And yet, he found himself stepping closer. The chamber was small, scarcely more than a dungeon cell carved into the foundations of the estate. The walls wept with damp, streaked dark with moss. Chains rusted into the stone like veins, and the girl was bound by the worst of them, wrists stretched unnaturally high, her arms trembling from exhaustion. The traveler stopped 3 paces away, his knife still drawn, his eyes narrowed. He had expected fear in her gaze, perhaps the wide, animal terror of a cornered victim, but what he saw was something sharper, almost calculating, glimmering just beneath her tears. "Who put you here?" he asked, his voice low, steady. Her lips quivered. I don't know. I woke here days ago. Please, you must believe me, I don't deserve this." She tugged at the shackles until the skin around her wrists flushed raw. "Don't leave me here. I'll reward you. I promise I'll do whatever you ask." Her words came in a rush, the desperation in them thick enough to choke on. The traveler's eyes shifted to the manacles, to the floor beneath her. The straw was matted with filth, but no bones lay scattered, no gnawed remains as one might expect in a prison where captives were left to starve. A bowl sat just out of her reach, water still sloshing faintly inside as if it had been placed there not long ago. Someone had been keeping her alive. "Who brings you water?" he asked carefully. Her eyes darted to the side, then back to him. "I don't know. I hear footsteps sometimes. They never speak. I only wake to find food pushed toward me." She swallowed hard, then leaned forward, chains scraping. "Please. Whoever they are, they'll come back. You can't leave me here when night falls." The traveler's grip on his knife tightened. He had walked into traps before, bandits who baited kind souls with the cries of children or women, then struck when their victims bent close. Yet here, in the heart of a ruin choked with dust and silence, he sensed something less ordinary. "You say you'll reward me," he said slowly. "With what?" Her lips trembled into the faintest suggestion of a smile, as though relieved he was entertaining her promise. "Anything. Gold, jewels. My family is wealthy. My father will pay whatever you ask." "Or," she faltered, glancing down, her cheeks coloring with shame, "if it is not coin you desire, I'll serve you myself. Whatever you command, I will obey." Her voice caught on the last words, breaking into sobs. She sank to her knees as far as the chains allowed, tears streaking through the grime on her face. For a long moment, the traveler said nothing. He listened to her cries, to the faint drip of water, to the distant creak of old wood in the bones of the estate. His gut twisted. She looked so fragile, so helpless, and yet he sheathed the knife slowly. Her sobs quieted, and hope bloomed on her face like a candle in the dark. "You'll free me?" she whispered. "I didn't say that." His voice was hard. "If I release you, I bind myself to whatever fate you carry. So answer me true, what is this place, and why does it feel wrong?" Her face blanched. For a moment, her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Then she whispered, "I don't know. Please, I swear I don't. I only know I've been kept here, and I will die if you walk away." The words rang too perfectly, too rehearsed, as though she had said them many times before. The traveler's eyes narrowed. He crouched near, studying the iron chains. They were heavy, yes, but corroded. A strong hand could break the rusted locks. He could free her, but his instincts clawed at him, whispering of danger. She saw his hesitation and lunged forward against the chains, her voice rising in a frantic scream. "Please, don't leave me here. I'll reward you. I'll do whatever you ask." The desperation in her cry struck the stones, echoing through the chamber like a curse. Her voice rang in his head long after it had faded, sharp enough to set his teeth on edge. For a moment, The traveler stood still, staring at her, this girl whose tears seemed endless, whose promises flowed like a river, whose presence unsettled him in ways he couldn't explain. And then, slowly, he rose to his feet, torn between mercy and suspicion, pity and dread. The decision would not be made tonight, but already he knew whatever choice he made, it would bind him to her and to whatever shadow still lingered in this place. The traveler lingered in the cold chamber, his shadow stretching across the stone floor as the last traces of daylight seeped through the barred window. The girl's sobs quieted into soft hiccups, though her eyes never left him, pleading, shimmering, with tears that looked almost too deliberate, as if each drop was placed to draw him in. He shifted his weight, testing the feel of the hilt at his side. He had freed captives before. Farmers taken by brigands, merchants caught by slavers. Those rescues had been clear-cut, righteous. Yet here, something twisted inside him with unease. The girl was bound, yes, but there was no sign of a captor's camp, no evidence of struggle. She looked untouched, unscarred, her dress torn at the hem but otherwise too fine, too clean for weeks in a dungeon. His instincts growled at him. Things are not as they seem. "Tell me your name," he said, his tone curt. Her eyes brightened at the question, as though she had won some small victory. "Elira," she whispered. "My name is Elira." He tasted the word, tested its shape in his mind. It rang too easily, like a name chosen for its softness. Still, he crouched low, examining the corroded shackles that bit into her wrists. The iron was weak, flakes of rust crumbling at his touch. One good strike with his knife pommel, and she would be free. Elira leaned toward him, the chains rattling like broken bells. "You can save me, please. No one else has come. I prayed, and you appeared. Perhaps you were sent." The traveler's lips thinned. He had no gods left to pray to, no sense of destiny. If I was sent, it was only by my own feet. Still, her words burrowed in his mind like hooks. "You can save me." He rose abruptly, stepping back from her reach. "I don't free strangers because they beg prettily," he said. "If I unchain you, you'll walk the road with me. You'll obey my rules, and you'll not complain." "Yes," she cried, her voice leaping like a flame. "Anything. Whatever you ask." The eagerness in her tone chilled him more than her despair had. It was too quick, too ready, as if she had rehearsed this reply countless times. The traveler turned his back to her, pacing slowly across the chamber. The floor was etched with grooves, shallow lines scratched into the stone. At first he thought them random, but as he crouched closer, the patterns seemed deliberate circles, spirals, shapes drawn over and over by desperate hands. Some were old, carved deep and worn smooth. Others looked recent, as if someone had traced them while shackled. "Elira," he said without looking at her, "what are these marks?" Silence. Then a nervous laugh, thin as paper. "Just madness, I suppose. I've been here too long. You would draw too if you were chained in darkness." But her voice faltered on the word madness, as though she didn't believe it herself. He touched the grooves, his fingers brushing the cold stone. The patterns prickled something in his memory symbols. He had seen scrawled on old roadside shrines warning travelers of cursed ground. He straightened. Uneasy. The girl tugged at her chains again, her voice rising into desperation. "Please, don't leave me here. I'll die if you go. You're my only chance. Whatever doubts you have, cast them aside. I'll prove myself. I'll repay you tenfold." Her voice echoed through the chamber, swelling until it seemed the walls themselves whispered after her. The traveler's jaw clenched. He had survived the road not by mercy, but by listening to the quiet voice within, the one that told him when a smile hid a knife, when a beggar's cry was bait. That voice was loud now, screaming at him to walk away. And yet, her eyes, wide wet, shimmering like glass. The kind of eyes that haunted dreams if one turned their back on them. He forced himself to step away toward the door. Her voice broke into raw panic. "No, don't go. Please, I'll do anything you ask. You can name your price and I'll obey." The chains clattered as she threw herself against them, her body shaking, her screams ragged. The sound tore through him, scraping against old scars and his memory voices of others he had failed to save, voices that had cursed him in his sleep. His hand rested on the doorframe. He could leave. He could abandon her and never look back. But his feet would not move. The traveler stood frozen, heart hammering, torn between instinct and pity, between survival and compassion. The girl's cries rose into the silence, and the night pressed in outside the ruined estate, heavy and waiting. Whatever choice he made, he knew, would shape his fate. The traveler stood at the threshold, one hand gripping the cold stone of the doorway, the other tightening over the hilt at his side. Behind him, Alira's sobs filled the chamber, raw and desperate, echoing until they seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Please," she whispered again, her voice cracking. "Don't leave me here, please. If you walk away, I'll never see the sun again. I'll reward you, I'll do anything you ask." The words gnawed at him, not for their promise, but for their weight. He had heard bargains like that before, from lips parched with thirst, from throats choked with fear. And always those words carried a curse. Still, his feet betrayed him. He turned back. Alira's face lit faintly in the gloom, her eyes shimmering with a mixture of hope and terror. The traveler exhaled through his nose, stepped closer, and knelt by her shackles. The iron was corroded nearly through, flaking under his touch. Up close, the smell of rust mingled with something faintly sweet, cloying, like Lila left too long in stagnant water. He pulled his knife free, flipped it in his hand, and raised the hilt. Her breath caught. Yes, yes. The strike rang against the manacle like a hammer against a bell. The corroded lock cracked, fragments scattering across the stone floor. Her right wrist slipped free. She gasped sharply, clutching the bloodless skin rubbed raw by the iron. The traveler worked quickly on the second manacle. This one was weaker still, and with a second blow, the chain gave way. The sound of iron striking stone rattled through the chamber, too loud, too final. Alira collapsed forward into his arms before he could step back. Her body was feather-light, bones beneath silk, trembling violently as though she had been waiting years for this moment. She clutched at him, burying her face into his chest. "I knew," she whispered, voice muffled by his cloak. "I knew someone would come. I prayed, and you answered." The traveler stiffened beneath her touch, his hand hovering awkwardly before pushing her gently back. She looked up at him with shining eyes, lashes wet, lips trembling into the barest hint of a smile. "On your feet," he said curtly. "If you're coming with me, walk." She nodded quickly, scrambling upright, her legs trembling under the sudden burden of freedom. She stumbled once, caught herself on his arm, then steadied. Despite her weakness, she did not let go of him, clinging as though he were her tether to life itself. He led her up the narrow stairwell, the dungeon air heavy with damp closing behind them. With each step, she seemed to breathe more easily, as if the chains still weighed upon her shoulders and were lifting, inch by inch, when they emerged into the ruined hall. The last light of day spilled faintly through a shattered window. Dust glittered in the sunbeam, and Alira raised her hand toward it, almost reverent. "How long has it been?" she murmured. "How many days without the sun? Weeks? Months?" The traveler did not answer. His eyes roved the broken walls, the splintered furniture, the blackened hearth. He could not shake the feeling that the house was listening, its ruined bones groaning in quiet disapproval at her freedom. She followed close. silent for a time, her bare feet whispering against the stone. Then softly she said, "You've bound me now." He stopped, half turning. "What do you mean?" Her smile was faint, fragile. "You released me. You struck the chains. That makes us bound. A debt has been forged, and I repay my debts." Her voice had shifted, no longer trembling, no longer desperate. It was calm, certain. The traveler's brow furrowed. He thought of the patterns carved into the stone of her cell. Circles, spirals, warnings. He shook the thought off. "You'll repay me by walking, nothing more." She tilted her head as though amused by his stubbornness, but she said nothing. They left the manor together. The courtyard lay in shadow, weeds swaying faintly in the evening breeze. The iron gate shrieked again as he pushed it wide, and Alira winced at the sound as though it tore through her bones. The road stretched ahead, swallowed by the darkening forest. He adjusted the strap of his pack, glancing once at the girl beside him. Her chains were broken, but a new weight pressed between them, an invisible thread, woven the moment he struck iron to rust. As they walked, the traveler could not help but wonder whether he had freed her or unleashed her. The forest swallowed them quickly once they left the crumbling estate. The trees closed in, their branches weaving together overhead until the last glow of sunset was a faint orange wound in the distance. The traveler led the way, boots crunching, on a path half hidden by weeds, while Alira followed close behind, her bare feet whispering against the earth. At first, she said nothing, drinking in her freedom like a starving woman tasting bread. She touched every branch, every leaf that brushed her fingers, as though assuring herself the world was real and solid beyond stone walls. The traveler kept his silence too, his senses sharp, ears tuned for pursuit. But the ruin did not stir behind them. Only crows rose from the broken spires, circling once before vanishing into the dark. After a while, Alira began to hum, soft, tuneless, like a child. The sound carried oddly in the woods, rising and falling with the rhythm of her steps. "Quiet," the traveler muttered over his shoulder. She stopped at once, though her lips curved faintly, as though amused by his caution. Hours passed. Night thickened, and the forest filled with its own voices, the croak of frogs, the whisper of wind, the creak of branches swaying. They walked by starlight alone. The traveler carried a small lantern, but he kept it unlit. Fire was a beacon, and beacons invited attention. It was Alira who broke the silence again. "There's a stream ahead and left," she said suddenly, pointing through the trees. The traveler paused. He hadn't seen or heard anything beyond the path. "How do you know?" Her face lit with certainty. "I remember it. I used to come this way long ago." He frowned. "You told me you didn't know where you were." Her expression faltered, then smoothed into a smile too quick, too rehearsed. "Not the house," she said, "but the woods, I think. Pieces of them are coming back to me." His jaw tightened. Lies sat too easily on her tongue. Still, thirst gnawed at him, and he turned toward the direction she indicated. After a short walk, the sound of running water reached them, and indeed, a narrow stream cut through the undergrowth. Alira knelt at the bank, cupping her hands to drink. The water caught moonlight, glimmering silver, but when he crouched to fill his flask, he caught her watching him, not the way a frightened girl might, but with an intent that unsettled him, as though she were studying the way he moved, the way he drank, the way he breathed. They pressed on until the woods thinned. By midnight, they reached a clearing where the remnants of an old shrine stood. A squat stone pillar rose from the earth, worn smooth by weather, its surface etched faintly with symbols the traveler half recognized, words against evil, prayers to forgotten saints. He approached it with care, resting a hand on the moss-covered stone. Such shrines were common along old roads, meant to protect wayfarers. But when he turned, he saw Alira standing frozen at the tree line. Her face had gone pale. Her hands clenched in her dress as though to keep them from trembling. "Come on," he said. "It's safe here." She shook her head once, violently. "No," his brow furrowed. "It's just a shrine." Her eyes darted to the symbols carved in the stone. I don't like them. Please, let's move on." The traveler studied her in silence, the cold wind stirring between them. Fear flickered in her eyes, but it was not the fear of superstition. It was deeper, older, a loathing etched into her bones. "You've seen these before," he said quietly. Alira swallowed, her voice barely audible. "Yes." "And?" "They hurt." The word was torn from her throat, ragged, as if she hadn't meant to speak it aloud. She backed a step from the clearing, shadows clinging to her form as though eager to reclaim her. The traveler's grip tightened on the strap of his pack. Every instinct screamed at him to leave her there at the edge of the shrine's protection. And yet he remembered the chains, the bruised wrists, the way her body had collapsed into his arms with desperate relief. He turned back to the shrine, laid his palm flat against the cool stone, and whispered a wordless prayer, not because he believed, but because caution demanded it. Then he slung his pack higher and walked past her, back into the dark woods. Alira hesitated only a moment before hurrying after him, her bare feet silent, her eyes fixed firmly on the ground. The shrine lay behind them, swallowed again by the fado. Night. Ahead stretched the endless road, and with each step the traveler felt the invisible thread between them grow tighter, binding him to a fate he had not chosen. By the time the forest broke into open fields, dawn was already bleeding across the horizon. The traveler had walked through the night without pause, wary of every shadow. Alira followed close at his side, though her bare feet should have been torn and bloodied by the rough path. Strangely, they were not. The traveler noticed but said nothing. Ahead lay a cluster of houses, thatched roofs smoking faintly in the cold morning air. A village small, weary, the kind that clung to the edges of survival. Chickens wandered the lanes. Dogs barked faintly as the two strangers appeared at the path's end. Alira shrank behind him as curious faces peeked from doorways. The traveler raised a hand in cautious greeting, and soon a bent old woman emerged from the nearest cottage, leaning heavily on a cane. "You've walked far," she rasped, her eyes sharp despite the lines of age. "Few travelers come this way now." "Water food," the traveler said. "A place to rest the night." The old woman's gaze slid to Alira. The girl's hair was tangled, her face pale, her dress still marked by the grime of the dungeon. Yet there was something in the way the woman looked at her, something like recognition. "Who's the girl?" she asked. "My charge," the traveler replied curtly. "I freed her from the ruins yonder." She was chained there, the woman's lips pressed thin. Her eyes darted toward the other villagers now gathering in a loose circle. Murmurs rippled through them, low, uneasy, threaded with words the traveler could not yet catch. One man spat into the dirt. Another made a sign across his chest, warding off evil. "What is it?" the traveler demanded, his hand straying unconsciously toward his knife. The old woman stepped closer, voice lowered though every villager strained to hear. "There was a child," she said, "years ago, taken by the curse of that place. She lured men, promised them reward, obedience, love. They followed her, and were never seen again." Alira flinched as though struck. The woman's eyes narrowed. "You bring her here. Why? To spread the curse to our doors?" The crowd muttered agreement, some backing away, others gripping tools like weapons. The traveler's jaw clenched. He half turned to Alira. "What are they talking about?" Her lips parted, trembling. Tears welled quickly, too quickly. "Lies," she whispered. "All lies. They hate me because they don't understand. I've done nothing. Please, don't believe them." The villagers hissed at her plea, some making the warding sign again, others muttering prayers. A child cried, pulled back by his mother. The traveler raised a hand sharply. "Enough." His voice cut through the rising noise. "I found her, chained and starved in a ruin. Whatever tale you speak of, she has suffered enough." But even as he said it, a gnawing doubt twisted inside him. The rumor matched her too closely. A cursed girl, luring men with promises. "I'll reward you. I'll do whatever you ask." The words still echoed in his head. The old woman leaned heavily on her cane. "You speak of chains. Chains can bind demons as well as children. Ask yourself, traveler, who locked her there and why?" Her question struck him like a blow. He thought of the strange patterns etched into the stone floor of the dungeon, of her terror at the shrine, of her quick, perfect promises. Alira's hand clutched his arm suddenly, fingers cold. "Please," she whispered, low enough only he could hear. "Don't let them turn you against me. You saved me. You freed me. I am yours now. Don't abandon me." Her eyes were wide, wet, trembling with devotion that bordered on fever. The traveler looked from her to the villagers, their faces twisted with fear and suspicion. He was caught between two truths, one cruel, one dangerous. Either the villagers were blinded by superstition, or Alira carried something far darker than innocence. The old woman's voice broke through again, harsh and final. "Leave her here, traveler. Leave her to the woods, to the ruin that birthed her. Take your coin and your life and go." The crowd pressed closer, their distrust thick as smoke. Alira clung to him, shaking, her voice frantic now. "Please, don't. Leave me. You promised. You said I must obey, and I will. Anything you ask. Just don't give me to them." Her desperation wrapped around him like chains of its own. The traveler's chest ached with the weight of decision. And for the first time since striking her shackles, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The villagers would not house them. No matter what coin the traveler offered, doors shut and shutters banged closed at the sight of Alira. In the end, he led her to the edge of the village, where a tumble-down barn leaned against the slope of a field. The roof gaped, the straw inside was damp and sour, but it was shelter enough. He built no fire, not with so many eyes still watching from the shadows of the cottages. Instead, he sat against a post, cloak wrapped tight, while Alira curled on the straw a few feet away. For a long while neither spoke. At last she whispered, "You don't believe them, do you?" The traveler's jaw worked, but he said nothing. "They lie because they fear me," she pressed, her voice breaking with soft sobs. "They always have, even before the chains." He turned his head, studying her. "Always?" Her eyes widened slightly, as though she had revealed more than she intended. "I mean, when I was younger. Different. They looked at me as though I didn't belong." Her voice softened to a plea. "You're the only one who's treated me as if I'm not a monster. Don't let them poison you against me." The traveler looked away, his gaze fixed on the cracks in the barn wall where moonlight slipped through. His instincts still screamed at him. Yet he had carried her from that ruin, broken her chains with his own hands. That bound them, as surely as she had said. Sleep came fitfully, dragging him down despite his vigilance. And with sleep came dreams. He was back in the dungeon, the rusted shackles clanging, the smell of damp stone pressing heavy in his lungs. But it was not Alira chained to the wall, it was himself. His wrists raw, his voice hoarse as he whispered, "Please, don't leave me. I'll reward you. I'll do whatever you ask." He woke with a start, sweat cold on his brow. The barn was silent, except for Alira's breathing, slow and steady in the straw. He rubbed his eyes, forcing the dream away, but the words lingered in his mind like a curse by dawn. They were back on the road. Alira walked close, her hand brushing his arm from time to time, as if testing whether he would recoil. She spoke, little, though her eyes darted constantly at the trees, the sky, the path ahead. When they passed a weathered milestone etched with half-erased runes, she flinched and turned her face aside. The traveler noticed. He said nothing, but his suspicion grew. At midday, they stopped to drink at a shallow brook. He watched her carefully as she bent to the water. Her reflection rippled, blurred, and for a heartbeat, he thought he saw something else staring back. Not her pale face, but something darker, eyes hollow, mouth stretched too wide. When he blinked, it was gone. "Are you well?" she asked, tilting her head, voice sweet with concern. He forced a nod, though his throat was dry. "Fine?" Her smile returned, small and soft. "Good. You need your strength." "We still have far to go." The words struck him strangely. "We still have far to go." As though she already knew their road, knew their destination. That night, he stayed awake longer, knife in hand, pretending to doze. Alira lay near the embers of their small fire, eyes closed, lips moving faintly as if in prayer. But as he leaned closer, he realized it was not prayer. It was a whisper, repeated over and over, "Ask. Ask for your reward." His skin crawled. He sat back sharply, heart hammering. She stirred, opening her eyes lazily as if nothing had happened. "You should sleep," she murmured. "I'll keep watch." The suggestion was gentle, innocent. Yet her eyes glimmered with something unreadable in the firelight. The traveler lay down again, but he did not sleep. The suspicion gnawed at him now like a wolf at the bone. Alira had promised obedience, reward, devotion. She said she was bound to him, and yet, with every step they took, he wondered, was she his burden, or was he already hers? They reached the river by dusk. It cut through the forest like a black ribbon, swollen with spring melt, its surface glimmering with the last scraps of daylight. The traveler knelt on the bank to refill his flask, the cold water stinging his fingers, while Alira lingered behind him, staring across the current with wide, shining eyes. "Stay close," he muttered, screwing the flask shut, but when he glanced up, she was gone. His gut tightened. He rose silently, knife sliding free of its sheath. The woods were too quiet. Not even a night bird stirred. He scanned the tree line, the river's bend, the shadows shifting between the reeds. Then he heard it, a voice, hers low, hushed, carried by the wind, not speaking to him. Speaking to someone else. The traveler crept along the riverbank, his steps muffled by moss and damp earth. The sound grew clearer with every pace. He pressed himself behind a tree and peered through the branches. Alira knelt on the far bank, hands clasped tight before her as if in prayer. But it was no saint she prayed to. Her words slithered from her lips like oil, soft, coaxing, intimate. "I found him," she whispered to the water. "He freed me, as you said he would. He is strong. He doubts, but he stays. He will bind himself tighter, I promise." The traveler's breath caught. Her voice, so desperate when she had begged him, was different now, calm, certain, almost reverent. The river stirred. No wind touched its surface, yet ripples moved outward from where she knelt, as though something vast shifted beneath. For a heartbeat, the traveler thought he saw it, a shape in the depths, dark and coiling, too large for the narrow water. Alira bowed her head lower. "I'll keep him close. I'll make him ask. Then he will be yours." The traveler's blood went cold. He stepped back, heart hammering, the tree bark rough under his hand. His instincts screamed at him to run, to vanish into the woods and never look back. But even as he turned, the river stilled, and Alira lifted her head. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dusk, catching what little light remained. For a moment, he thought she was looking directly at him. He froze. Then, slowly she smiled. The traveler stumbled back, cursing under his breath, and made his way to their camp in silence, forcing his breath steady. He doused the lantern before she could return, seating himself by the embers of their small fire, knife hidden but ready in his hand. Minutes later, Alira appeared between the trees, her steps light, her face the very mask of innocence. "Where did you go?" he asked flatly. "To gather wood," she replied without hesitation, holding out a bundle of damp sticks. "You look so tired, I thought I'd help." Her voice was soft, sweet, trembling with the same fragile devotion she'd shown before. If not for what he had seen, he might have believed her. But now, every word was a blade, honed too sharp, aimed too perfectly. He said nothing. He only watched her as she placed the sticks carefully onto the fire, her pale hands delicate against the shadows. She glanced at him once, her smile small, hopeful, trembling with what looked like fear. "Do you trust me?" she asked suddenly. The traveler's throat tightened. He forced himself to meet her gaze. "For now," he said. Her smile widened, just slightly. She looked down at the fire, and in the glow of the embers, her face seemed softer, younger-like. Any lost girl clinging to the only hand that had pulled her from the dark. But the traveler could still hear her voice, coiled in his skull like a whisper he could never unhear. "He will bind himself tighter, I promise." And as the fire burned low, he realized that her chains had never truly been broken. They had only been shifted onto him. The days that followed blurred into a haze of silence. The traveler and Alira walked together, camped together, shared bread and water, but something invisible had rooted itself between them. He said little, watching her from the corner of his eye. She, in turn, was gentler than ever, her voice soft as down, her every gesture careful, cautious, as though afraid one wrong move might drive him away. Yet at night, when she thought him asleep, he heard her whispering again, not to him, never to him. The words were too low to catch, but the rhythm of them set his teeth on edge. A litany, a vow, a prayer to something nameless. By the third night, he could bear it no longer. They had made camp in the hollow of a ruined stone wall, firelight dancing against the broken masonry. Alira sat opposite him, her hair falling in a tangled curtain, eyes fixed on the flames. The shadows moved strangely on her face, sometimes soft, sometimes sharp, as if the fire could not decide whether to make her angel or monster. The traveler set down his knife deliberately. "Tell me the truth," he said. His voice was steady, but inside, his heart beat like a drum. "Who were you speaking to at the river?" Alira's head snapped up. Her eyes widened, then softened almost at once into tears. "You followed me. Answer me." She shook her head quickly, rising to her knees, hands outstretched as though to soothe him. "You don't understand. I wasn't speaking to anyone. I was only remembering, talking to myself." He leaned forward. "You said, 'He will be yours.' I heard you." Her lips trembled. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she lowered her gaze, hands clutching her dress. "It wasn't what you think." Her voice was a breath, fragile, pleading. "I was afraid. I thought if I said what it wanted to hear, it would leave us alone." The word landed heavy. "What is it?" She flinched, shaking her head, tears streaking her cheeks. "Please, don't make me say it. If I speak its name, it will hear." The traveler's knuckles whitened around the hilt of his knife. Every instinct screamed at him to end this, to sever the chain between them before it pulled him under. Yet when he looked at her, frail, weeping, begging, he felt the weight of his own guilt. He had freed her. He had carried her this far. To abandon her now felt like betrayal. Still, doubt gnawed at him. "Illyra," he said, voice low, "tell me this. Why me? Why was I the one who found you? Why did you cling to me so quickly, as though you knew I would come?" For the first time, she did not answer with tears. Instead, she looked up slowly, her gaze catching the firelight, her voice quiet but steady. "Because you did come. You were meant to. I waited, and you came. You were the one who broke the chains. That means you are mine, and I am yours. That is the way of it." The words were neither plea nor bargain. They were truth, spoken with a certainty that chilled him more than her weeping ever had. The traveler's stomach turned. He rose abruptly, knife in hand. Her eyes widened, not in fear, but in sorrow. "You would kill me? If that is what it takes." She rose too, her hair falling wild, her pale face luminous in the firelight. "Then do it," she whispered, voice trembling. "Strike me down. See if it severs the chain. But if you spare me, if you keep me, then know I will not let go. Not ever." The fire popped between them, sending sparks into the night. The traveler's hand shook. The knife felt like iron dragging him into the earth. Every breath burned. With the weight of his choice. To kill her now would be to end the threat, but also to stain his soul with the blood of a girl who had begged only for his protection. To spare her would be to accept the binding she had spoken of, to carry her farther, deeper, into whatever awaited them both. His throat was dry as he lowered the blade, though not entirely. It hovered still, halfway between mercy and judgment, and in the silence that followed, he knew, whatever choice he made tonight, it would not be his alone. Illyra was choosing too. The traveler stood still, knife lowered, his chest heaving with the weight of his choice. Illyra's eyes glimmered in the firelight, soft, fragile, but holding a certainty that chilled him to the bone. "You won't strike me," she whispered. "You can't, and now you must choose." He clenched the hilt tighter, trying to steady the storm in his mind. The chains she had worn were gone, but their echoes had followed her. Now he felt them, invisible but unrelenting, wrapped around his own wrists, his own heart. "You will obey me," she said softly, stepping closer. Her bare feet made no sound on the earth. "And I will serve you, or protect you, or guide you. Whatever I said, I meant. But do not think yourself free." The traveler's throat tightened. He remembered the river, the shadows that moved. Beneath the water, the whispered words that had climbed into his mind. "He will bind himself tighter, I promise." He had thought he was the master of his choice, but the truth pressed in now. He had only ever been a participant in her design. He began, but words failed him. Illyra smiled faintly, stepping close enough that he could see the tiniest movements of her lips, the quiver of her lashes. "It's done," she said. "You are mine as I am yours. Do not fear. I will not harm you, not yet." The fire flickered between them, casting shadows that stretched unnaturally, as if the night itself leaned in to watch. The traveler swallowed hard, trying to push down the rising panic. He could leave. He could run into the darkness beyond the ruined wall. He could strike her, sever the bond that pressed invisible chains around him. Yet he did neither. Every instinct screamed to flee, to fight, to survive, but some deeper, unbidden part of him hesitated. Illyra reached out then, her hand brushing his arm with the gentlest touch. Her eyes held him, and in them he saw not only devotion but something far older, something cunning and patient. "You freed me," she whispered. "And now you belong to the road, to the shadows, to the promise you made." Her words sank into him like ice, slow and unyielding. He felt the thread she had spoken of, the binding coil tighter around him, entwining with his very will. His mind throbbed with the knowledge that escape was no longer a choice. He dropped the knife. The metal struck the stone floor with a dull clang that sounded impossibly loud in the still night. Alira's smile widened, almost imperceptibly, a flicker of triumph hidden beneath the mask of innocence. "Good," she said. "You understand now." The traveler sank to the earth, chest heaving, heart thudding. He tried to speak, to bargain, to plead, but the words caught in his throat. Every movement, every thought seemed to obey some unseen rhythm, some promise that had already been spoken. Alira knelt beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his face. "Do not fear," she said again. "I will be with you, always. But now you are bound to me, as I have always been bound to you. The chains are gone, but the binding remains." He stared at her, helpless, aware that the road ahead would never be empty, that every step, every breath, would carry her presence with it. The weight of her gaze pressed down on him, not cruelly, not angrily, but inexorably, inescapably. The forest beyond was silent, the river murmuring softly nearby. Firelight flickered across the broken stones, shadows moving like living things. And in that silence, the traveler understood the truth. He had freed her from iron, but not from fate. And now she would not be freed from him. Alira rose, stepping back into the shadows. Her pale face glimmered faintly, her eyes reflecting the dying firelight. "Come," she said. "The road continues, and we have far to go. But remember, you will obey as I will. It is the way of the binding, and it is done." The traveler rose, slow and unsteady, every movement weighted with the knowledge that his path was no longer his own. He followed her silently, the night pressing around them, the world holding its breath. As they walked into the darkened forest, he felt the threads coil tighter, unseen but undeniable. The chains were gone, yes, but the promise remained. And in the quiet of the trees, he realized the terrible truth. He had saved her. And in saving her, he had condemned himself. The moon rose above them, pale and unblinking, and the night whispered with unseen voices. The traveler knew with cold certainty that whatever came next, whatever horrors or wonders the road would bring, he and Alira would face it together, bound by a promise that neither could break. And in that binding, understood, there would be no turning back.